Hi everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on App Builder. It's going to be sort of a feature roundup, but there's going to be some key highlights which you saw in the mailer that we sent out around some of the cool new things that are shipping either already or will be shipping in the next week in App Builder. So you're going to see a few great demos today between myself and George, who will be joining you as usual, but we also have the A-Team online, Zdravko, Brian, Pablo. The whole team is on the chat, so please ask questions in the chat. And we have Jesse and JJ helping out as well. So my name is Jason Barris. I am the SVP here of Developer Tools at Infragistics. With me, of course, is George Abraham, our Senior Product Owner and Senior UX Designer, Architect, all things App Builder and Indigo Design. And today we're going to walk through some great new things, as I mentioned, that we are shipping already. Some things maybe you've seen before, but kind of a different demo today. And then some brand new features and capabilities. So some quick housekeeping. We will send out the recording and the slide deck tomorrow or the next day as soon as everything's wrapped up on our end. So keep an eye out in your email for that. And I will highlight that we are shipping 23.1, albeit a little late. Usually we ship it in the beginning of Q2, but now it's near the end of Q2, I believe. So it's a little bit late, but there's some neat features coming in 23.1. So keep an eye out in your mailbox, your email over the next week for information around 23.1. In fact, it may be going out even today as we speak. So you will have links to downloads and things like that. And I'll share one of the blogs with you today. So let's go ahead and get started. So I want to just highlight the grid capabilities in Ignite UI. And then, of course, this is what you get in App Builder. So when we look at the grid in App Builder, which you're going to see today in more detail in George's demo, there are a lot of features and capabilities in the underlying grid that we don't necessarily surface in App Builder. Either we don't plan on surfacing it, or we're just not there yet with the editors and the designer and the design time experience. So when we look at this list of all of the capabilities and features of the grid, I just want to continue to highlight that it is the most robust grid, either Blazor, Angular, web components, soon to be React on the market. And we did not just stuff it with features. It is highly performant. So you could put it up against any grid on the market and we will have better scrolling, smoother scrolling, faster scrolling, no jitters and UX-y weird things, because we focus on not only having all of the features, but also making sure that it is the fastest grid on the planet for your applications, because we know performance means everything. So what's new and what's coming? This is the short list. There are other things that have shipped already this year. What I'm going to highlight today is the first two items, the new Reveal dashboard component and the updated Figma UI kit with plugins with auto layout. I know we've seen a little bit of that already in some previous webinars, but I'm going to show it today again on a demo that I recently did in New York. And then a bunch of other things here, grid CRUD features for tree grid, and the tree component, hierarchical iterator, so you get hierarchical data support, chart aggregations. We've covered that a lot, which is really slick. We have a new on-prem version of App Builder, updated sample apps, new controls and docs for things like stepper, combo, select, improved layout heuristics, and more improvements in the doc. So we're continuing to improve the product with every release. We try to do minor releases of App Builder every 2 to 4 weeks, and then we roll everything up into a major release every few months. So for the first item in my list, the brand new Reveal dashboard component. Reveal is a different product. It's licensed differently, but we have a lot of overlap in customers that use the DevTools products and the Reveal products. So we decided to add the Reveal dashboard component into App Builder to make it easy for you to start working with that product. And that's going to be part of the demo today. And then what George is going to highlight is a new feature that's coming. Maybe it's going to be today, maybe end of the week, maybe early next week, but we're days away of the grid column configuration, which is really slick inside of App Builder. So with no further ado, let's go ahead and do a demo. The first thing I want to highlight, no matter what, everything that we talk about today, we have in a blog from Zdravko. So you'll see all of this and check your emails for this when it comes out. We also have another blog from me, which has some other 23.1 features, but all of this stuff you'll be able to get and see and use. So what I'm going to do is first, I am going to open up Figma. So I believe, do I have Figma open? Maybe not. Let me go ahead and open up Figma. And inside of Figma, I did have it open. It came up pretty instantly, so I must have had that open. Inside of Figma, we have a beautifully crafted design that Andy on our team put together. And she did this in preparation for a demo that I did, because we also work with OpenFin, and OpenFin is a financial services operating system, and we integrate really well with this thing called FTC3, which is a protocol which you can communicate back and forth between micro apps, and you can share information, launch apps, etc. But OpenFin has this whole infrastructure that facilitates that in their desktop runtime. So this example, what I was highlighting was that, everyone's using Figma nowadays. Adobe XD sort of dead. Now we have Figma. So what can I do with Figma that's cool to demonstrate App Builder? So we have this application. It is a full-on Figma app. If I go over to my assets, you can see that when it launches here, these are all of the components that I'm using inside of this guy. And then these are all of the design. This is the design system for Ignite UI, which is what we use in App Builder. And these are all the controls. So essentially, you can create anything in Figma with our design system, and then we will guarantee that it is pixel perfect for the most part inside of App Builder. So what did I do? I went and installed our plugin from the Figma store. It's called the Indigo Design Figma plugin, and it shows up here. So what I'm going to do is take this application and pump it over to App Builder so I can continue to work on it. So I'm going to click Create New App. I get a dialog that pops up, which is the actual plugin. This lists all of the workspaces. I'm going to put this into the webinars workspace, and I'm going to call this Trader App Webinar. And I'll leave all the defaults, and I'll click Create App. So what this is doing is it's pumping this up to the cloud. We're parsing it, getting into our common object model, and that is something that matches the UI kits with the components, and that's how we get a designable app in App Builder, which is real components. So I'm going to go ahead and click the link here, which will take me over to this application. And here I am. This is exactly what was just in Figma, but now it's in App Builder. This is the actual runtime of App Builder. So App Builder, we don't have the master detail working yet. That's coming actually at the end of July. You'll be able to see that. But this is the exact identical screen that I had inside of Figma. So I'm going to go ahead and click Edit. And of course, as I select items, I have all my properties. These are all the controls. You can see the DOM is over here, and a lot of good things happening here. Now, what did I do? I went ahead and modified this app a little bit inside of App Builder. I copied out the middle part, created a master view with some child views, and I created something called the ngconf trader, because we also demoed this at ngconf. So I'm going to go ahead and open that version of this, and you'll see it's basically identical except some additional screens that I added. So this is what it looks like in my modified app. And I just created that master view and just pulled this out into a child view so I could have different navigation to different child views. So I added a screen called Dashboards, Dashboard View, FTC3 Playground, FinTech Feed, etc. And all of these might have grids or other things on them that are sort of interesting. But you'll notice another thing that I did here in my other application, the one that was just pumped up from Figma, I had hard-coded data. So I went ahead and bound all of this to real data. I have a grid here bound to real data. I bound the chart to different data. So I did a little bit of work here. And then I also added some text here that helped me modify this in Visual Studio Code when I was done. But if I just run this application, you can see I've got my chart. Everything looks good. I've got my list here. I actually added an interaction here to click this and to bring up another screen. You can see here this actually picked up a dashboard. I'll navigate back and I'm back over to this screen. On my dashboard view, I added another bound control. This is our card view with some images bound, and when I click open on one of these guys, it's taking me to a dashboard, but this is always just sort of this temporary dashboard. What I want to highlight is the reveal aspect of this. So on my dashboard view, this is actually the reveal component. So I'm going to hit the delete key, and my dashboard looked like this initially, or my dashboard view screen. So I did a Control E, and I typed in reveal. You can see that reveal dashboard came up here, and I selected it. This guy's a little bit small, so I have a minimum width and a minimum height. I could go ahead and set all of these, but I'll just kind of drag this over. And what you get is the base URL to where my dashboard lives, and then a link to this dashboard. So this is a sales dashboard. I know on this site, I also have the marketing dashboard. But the beautiful thing is this is the full self-service dashboard experience that you get with Reveal. So it has all the features, drill downs, editing, all these things that you would get if you were just using our Reveal SDK. You don't write any code for this. You're creating dashboards. So it's a dashboarding tool. You're binding to your back end, our Reveal server, which connects to your data, and then you're loading this up with individual visualizations. So what did I do next? Of course, I went ahead and I published this to GitHub, and I ended up grabbing that in my Visual Studio. So if I pop open Visual Studio here, you'll see that I've got my dashboard component, my dashboard view. But what I wanted to highlight was in my main view. If you remember, I said I added some text so I would know what to change. Well, essentially, I'm doing data binding. So I went into my app and I just did a bunch of data binding for this application because all the data is there from App Builder. It's just not doing that master detail because we haven't enabled that yet. So I wanted to make sure that the master detail worked. And basically that's what I did here. So I ran this guy, and if we open up my browser, that is the ngconf trader right here. So as I select these items, you'll notice that this data is changing. This data over here is changing, and my chart is changing. But the cool thing is if I click this button here, this is actually going to open up a chart based on the selected customer from my application. So you see here it's UMH properties. Here's the visualization. If I expand this guy out, and again with Reveal, you have a full self-service dashboarding experience. I could go ahead and click edit mode. Maybe I don't want to use a bubble chart. Maybe I'll do a column chart, and it might not make sense for this data, but Reveal fixed it up for me nicely, and it works perfect. Instead, maybe we'll do a stacked column. So my chart looks like this. I check the box, I minimize it out, and now that visualization will get saved when I click the checkbox. So it's a full, self-service dashboard experience. You have a bunch of other features here like exporting images, PowerPoints, PDF, export to Excel. So for example, if I export to Excel, I can choose what I want to export. I'll click the export button. And here I got my banking risk Excel file. We'll let this guy open up. I'll slide it over here. We'll close that down. Where'd my Excel file go? So there's my banking risk Excel file. The nice thing is when we export all this stuff, we actually export real charts with it. So it's pretty slick. On all of the exports, the PDFs and PowerPoints are the same. But if I go back to my screen here and let's select iSig, I'll click the button, and now I have the dashboard for Insignia Systems iSig. It's the same template, it's just the data for iSig. So that's the beauty of this. And I could also here, I could select another one or two or whatever I want. and apply and just use the connected visualizations on my filter to show data for like another data point. Now, if I click over to this guy, this is another screen I created in App Builder. The only thing I did different here was on the open button, I told it to go open a new dashboard. So I'll go ahead and click, for example, manufacturing, and now I open the manufacturing dashboard. Here I am inside of manufacturing. I can look at this guy. I can change the way this visualization looks. Maybe I'll go edit it. Maybe I don't want cost of labor versus revenue. Maybe I want to do product and product line and units produced, like so. And I could do something like operators by function as a category, maybe. Let's see how this looks. That looks good. And I can check this box and minimize this. And now I've got this dashboard. Maybe I want this guy to be a little bit bigger. And I can start moving my individual visualizations around so my dashboard sort of fits into the spot that I have. So you have the ability to customize this however you want. It can look as beautiful as you want. In this case, if I feel like, oh, well, nothing will fit the way I kind of was hoping, I can always go back here, turn on auto layout, and now it's going to reorganize my dashboard and put it like this. But that's Reveal. Again, if you're interested in having like an embedded SDK with visualizations that, give you a full self-service BI experience, it's a different license than you get with App Builder, but it's now integrated with App Builder. So for you to get started is super, super simple. And then this application started inside of Figma, and this is what it looked like in Figma. And it is literally pixel perfect in the browser after I uploaded it to Figma. I just created a master view with some child views, and it is done. So with that, my demo time is up. I'm going to pass it over to George, and he's going to show how to use column configuration in the grid. So George, you can go ahead and share.
In today's demo, I'm going to show you how you can convert a grid which looks like this, which is a very typical line of business scenario, into something which looks like this. And we achieve this with the use of column templates. And we have two kinds of column templates for the cell itself. So there is one column template for the display of the cell. And we have another column template which actually handles what it should look like when you're editing that particular cell. The grid by itself is pretty performant. It's one of the fastest grids we have out there. And it comes with a lot of the features already baked in. So for example, you have filtering, sorting, pinning. All of these features are very easy to enable on top of the grid. And the grid comes with some default templates. So for this particular grid, I actually have editing enabled. So when I actually select into any one of these cells here, so for example, for last name, when I double click it, it knows that it's actually a text input, and it creates a text input for us automatically. You don't actually have to do anything. Similarly, if you select something which is a date field, you would see the date editor, and this is also done automatically. But what we want to do is really change the look and feel in order to achieve this look and feel for a grid, which is sometimes required by the business to make your grid actually look nice and pretty. So on the basic grid, there are some capabilities which are also part of those column templates without actually having to enable or create these custom templates for your cells. So in this case, you can see the avatar URL pointing to a specific PNG for showing inside this grid. So the quickest way to say get imagery into your grid would be if I go back to the editor, and what you're seeing is the edit time experience for the grid. And for each of the grids, you can see that all the child elements for the grid are the columns. And I can select my avatar URL, and that actually displays the grid column properties. And here you have a display format. There is another option for an image. And if I select image, you can see that it automatically replaces it with the image. And if this is good for you, that's not a problem. You can just go ahead and move on. But if you want to customize it even more, it says that I do not want to show separate columns for last name, first name. Instead, I want to combine it with the avatar URL, which is similar to the scenario I was showing you earlier, Like in this templated version, I'm showing a nice little avatar. I'm controlling the size of it, and then I'm showing your first name and last name. I would like to have more control over it, which is why I'm going to create this basic grid and I'm going to convert it into a display template so that I can customize this. The first order of business, there are some columns here which I really don't need. And in App Builder, all you have to do is select the column and hit your delete key, and they're gone. Same thing for address street, address city. These are things which I am going to create a custom template for, so I don't need it to occupy all the space on the grid. So I'm just getting rid of all of these things. Phone number, I'm going to keep intact. Now for this avatar URL, I can create a custom column, which is not bound to anything, and it's only there to represent the contents of the avatar, the last name, and the first name. So again, I don't need employee ID. So I'm going to select this avatar URL. I can reuse this column. That means it'll still be bound, or I can convert it to an unbound column just by zapping that data field connection in here. And in this column here, I'm just going to give it a custom name called employee. So in order to customize the contents of this column, we have introduced this new capability we're called custom templates. And there are three kinds. One is called an header template, another called cell display, another for cell edit. And these templates are what allows us to create customized layouts and content inside that particular column. So in our case, I want to show the avatar, the first name, and the last name. So what I need is just display. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to enable my cell display. And you can see there's a hint for drop content here. I can just go ahead and drag and drop from the toolbox an avatar component, but just this is faster for me. There is a shortcut. It's called the Control E or Command E, which gives me an in-context search box. And I can say, give me an avatar. And it adds an avatar in place. And then I need this last name and first name, they are both text elements. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue editing that cell display template. I'm going to add two text elements. And I'm going to set this thing to a certain size, not overline, a caption size. And I'm going to copy and paste it twice. And for the first text element, I can now bind it to first name. And for the second text element, I can bind it to last name. And for the avatar, as you can see, I can now choose from an icon. I can choose image, and that exposes the binding option for me. And in the binding option, this particular data source actually has that avatar URL. So I'm just going to plug in the avatar URL. And as you can see, it's starting to look very close to what we already have. Now, the only thing you need to pay attention to is by default, the template does not actually give you any layout directions. So in order for us to really control the layout, all we need to do is add our own layout inside it. And I can do that by I can just select these elements, and you can do this in any order. You can add a layout first and then start dropping components, or you can do it after the fact. I'm doing it after the fact. So I'm just going to right click, add layout, and say add it to a row layout. And now this gives us the default, a flex container, which positions things as flex normally does. And in the vertical alignment, I'm just saying center it. And then I can also specify a gap property to space things out inside the flex container. So I'm going to give it like an 8-pixel gap. And for this image, I want it to be even farther away from the first name. What I can do is I can go into my margins here, and I can set a right margin of another 8 pixels, so just double the amount. And as you can see, now that I have created this layout, which is very similar to what I was showing you earlier, and I no longer need my last name and first name in my grid, and it's already looking very similar. So I can show you in the grid right now. I hit play, and you can see this is the basic grid which we just evolved, and this was the grid with template, which is exactly the same. The other quick thing I'm going to do in terms of binding is I just going to put a chip component instead of the phone number. So what I can go ahead and do, I can select my designer again. I'm going to select my address.phone and just call it phone number. Let it be, and I'm not removing the binding in this case, right? So I'm just going to call it phone number. And inside the column, I'm going to again edit. I'm going to change the cell display template. It goes blank because there's nothing in here. I'm going to just drop a chip component. And as you can see, the chip component already has some some functionality in here. So I'm just going to look for a phone icon here. I can replace the phone icon. And for the actual content of the chip, which is right now just showing a default name called country, I can actually bind it now to phone number. And that's all it takes for us to get a nice looking chip inside the phone number. For the date field, I'm not going to bother with it because it already has a date editor created by default. But what I do want to do is change the title area, which is right now just showing a normal display template called cost accountant. But I want to be able to show a select box, for example, in there. So the process is the same. I select the title. This time I'm going to not bother with the display template. The display template can be as it is, but I want to enable the edit template because as you go into the edit mode for editing that particular column, I want to show a select box. So when I enable the edit template, you now see there are two adorners which show up on top of the cell. So I can switch between display and edit. As I said, I'm not touching the display template at all. I have not even enabled it. So you're seeing what the default looks like. In the edit template, I can go in here and I'm going to drop in a select, right? So I'm going to add a select box in here. So by default, it adds an input field. It has a label and placeholder, but in the context of the column, I actually don't need it. So I'm just going to remove it from here. And that gives me a nice little clean select box in here. And for the select itself, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the options here, and I'm going to repeat it based on data. And the data I'm going to use is from a data source, which is bound to the same grid. So it's Northwind employees. And for the content of that list, I'm going to bind it to, I believe it was title. Yes, it was title. And the value, I'm also going to bind it to title. And I'm going to go ahead and at this point, this thing is bound, but I also want to bind the value of the select to whatever it was there before. So for that, what I need to do is the value field here. I'm going to select it as cost account title again. And that's pretty much it. So now I have a display template, which looks normal, and I have an edit template, which actually has a select box, right? So now if I hit preview, now this is, again, remember, this is the basic grid. I just modified the employees column, and I modified the title column and the chip column. So for the title column, now if I go and double click to enter the edit mode, you'll see, voila, I have my select box in here. And there is one feature which we're still working on improving right now is that right now, if you make the selection in preview and you select away, you see it reverts to the previous value. This thing is not going to be a problem when you actually generate the app, but we are working on improving this particular feature as we go along. So now I've shown you how you can use display templates to create a nice little custom layout. I've shown you how you can modify the edit template to create a different component in there. So for example, I use select, but we'll be adding the support for a simple combo or a single select combo very soon. And that allows you to kind of create a very custom layout for all your grids and makes it really pretty to actually experience the grid with all the same performance, but now with the benefit of templates. So as I mentioned, this behavior of it reverting back to the previous value is only a limitation in the App Builder preview. What I have here is a compiled demo. So I basically downloaded this application and I ran this is running as an Angular application right now. So I compiled this application in order to show you how this would behave differently after you generate the code. And actually, the first thing you need to notice is that whatever I was showing you inside the preview of the App Builder is pretty much exactly what you see in the running application. So there is no basic difference other than a toolbar disappearing on the top, but it's the very same component. So in here, if I change the value to say accountant 3, it'll actually preserve the value. And you can see that it's not been committed yet. It's got that italic style applied to it. And this is just to show you that whatever limitation I was showing you inside the App Builder preview of it not preserving the value, it's no longer the case when you actually generate the app and actually use the application directly. And one final thing I want to point out in terms of the demo is that now that you've been creating all these templates in your grid, we also have an easy way for you to find out which columns have templates, which columns have display templates. And that's where the outline actually kicks in, is that when you look at the grid itself, all the columns which have an expander means that they have child elements. So in the case of the employee column, if I expand it, you will see that it's got a cell display template. And if I have the phone number, it also has a cell display template. But if I open what you call the title, if I expand title, it has a cell edit template. So you can actually have full control and not having to hunt and pick like which columns have which kind of feature. You can actually see it directly in the outline itself. And if you select it, it'll take you directly into that correct mode. So you do not actually have to use the design surface directly all the time. You can use the outline to get the same benefit. And that's a quick summary of what's possible with column templates in App Builder and the support which is rolling out very soon to you. So you should be able to play with it and let us know if you have any feedback about this particular feature. See ya.
Okay, so let's wrap it up. I'm going to pop open the poll, or JJ will pop open the poll. Please answer the poll questions. They help us drive features and capabilities in the product. So when that pops up, we'd really appreciate your feedback in the product. So what are your next steps? Get Blazor, get Ignite UI, doesn't really matter, but get App Builder today. You get all the frameworks with it. Check out appbuilder.dev. That is the link to get the sign in and start your free trial. And really what I hope you got out of today is that App Builder is getting more and more mature for these low code needs that you have. So customizing grids, customizing screens, being able to take something from Figma and push it up to the cloud and then get it into App Builder within seconds. So you're really doing great collaboration between design and development to make this happen. And we're going to continue to roll out features. The next big feature coming for App Builder is master detail. So I click on a combo box item in my grid updates, or I click on a grid row in my chart updates, or I've got orders and order details and I'm clicking and the other data is getting fetched as I'm clicking. We're also adding features like global variables, which is very exciting, and then master detail from page to page. So the future is bright in the next quarter for more of these features in App Builder, which means you need to write less code, and especially if you are a Reveal customer or you want to try out Reveal, it's worth taking a look at App Builder today. So I want to thank everyone, and I want to thank George and everyone on the line. It looks like all of the questions were answered in the chat. We really appreciate your time, and we will see you at the next webinar.